Hello, welcome back to Interesting and Sexy, a podcast dedicated to spreading the awareness and visibility of intersex people, as well as discussing issues/experiences about queer life being different and all other things interesting and sexy. Today we have a very special guest, and no, it's not this adorable poochie that is on my lap, whose name is Frodo, by the way. But our guest is the president of Intersex Peer Support Australia, and her name is Michelle. And I just wanted to give a little disclaimer before this episode and say that we're going to be talking about some pretty heavy stuff, very, very important stuff. So, I just wanted to give a quick disclaimer and say some of it's going to be a bit heavy, but I think it's very important that we are still talking about it. And so just if you're an intersex person who is feeling very sensitive or easily triggered, just a heads up. But it's a really great conversation and there are some really important things said. So I'm really excited to introduce you to her. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay. Hey, Michelle, how are you going?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Blue.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I'm really excited to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
So I guess we'll just go ahead and jump into it. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who is Michelle? What is Michelle about, and how do you identify?
Okay, yeah. So my pronouns are she, her. I'm a cisgender intersex woman. I am the president of Intersex Peer Support Australia, and a couple of hobbies of mine are golf, and
Nice.
I have a handicap of 19 and I play in a lesbian golf club called Golf Bags.
Awesome.
Quite a fun club. And my other main hobby is fishing. So I love
Nice.
being down the beach and I love sunsets, and WA has awesome sunsets.
Yeah, you're in the perfect place for it.
We
Yeah.
are, yes.
So I am having you on because you are like me, and the previous guest, Mimi, you are interesting and sexy. What kind of intersex variation are you? If you would like to, could you speak a little bit about it and explain how your specific variation works?
Yeah, sure. So my variation is called classic congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or we call it CRH for short.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have salt wasting with that. So it means that I have a mutation on the gene CYP21A2. And because of this mutation, it means that I have a deficiency in the 21 hydroxylase enzyme.
Mm-hmm.
And that enzyme is responsible for cortisol and aldosterone production, which are two hormones. And they are important for life, really. You can't live without them.
Mm-hmm.
So cortisol is for stress relief. It controls blood pressure and blood sugar, as well as it controls your sleep and wake cycles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it does lots of other things as well. And
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty much has receptors throughout the body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And aldosterone is responsible for the balance of potassium and sodium in your body. So both of those things are super necessary for survival.
Yeah.
So in its place, I have to take medication. They're steroids, and steroids long-term steroids cause a lot of harm to the body. So that includes loss of bone density, and thin skin and bruising over time, because I've been taking these for life, so which is 55 years. So there is no alternatives at this point. They are doing lots of trials around the world. So I'm hoping that in the next maybe 5 years there may be an alternative, but right now there isn't. So yeah. So
I'm sorry, that sounds really challenging.
yeah, it is, and it wasn't really a challenge when I was a bit younger, but I'm starting to see the effects of it now.
Yeah.
So classic CRH affects about 1 in 15,000 children. And to get it, you have to have 2 parents that are carriers. So both parents must be carriers, and there's about a 1 in 4 chance of one of the children having it. So I have 3 siblings, so I'm the lucky 1 out of 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. And children that are born with classic usually are born with some type of atypical genitalia.
Yeah.
And this is like enlarged clitoris. They can have fused labia. They can have a urogenital sinus, which means that the urethra is attached to the vagina internally. So there's only one exit. There's no exit for urine. And a small vaginal opening. Those are the sorts of things that they can have. And
so it could be a mixture of them, or like one or the other, or
yeah. I suppose how bad it is can be different too. So there's a range, quite a big range apparently.
Yeah.
Of how it can affect you as a child. Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, most of those kids that have this type of thing end up having surgery to normalize their genitals under the age of 2 now. They're doing.
Oh my God.
And of course, yeah, anesthetics aren't good for children.
Yeah.
They cause other problems as well. So, and on top of that, a lot of these kids have the salt wasting as well, which I think is about 75% of all classic CAH kids have salt wasting. And so there's already some issues, medical issues with their bodies. So to put them under that extra potential harm, it is significant. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It sounds really, really intense. Do you want to tell us about your journey of discovery and your whole life story, basically?
Yeah, sure. It's long.
Yeah.
So
Well, we got time. We got as much time as you want.
So my story. So my life journey started from birth. I was born in the 60s, and I was born looking atypically different with my genitals at birth, but they weren't quite sure, I guess, what was going on. And they transferred me to the Children's Hospital from the general maternity hospital that my mum was in. And did further tests on me. They did karyotyping, which identifies the chromosomes. Is what they tended to use back then because there wasn't a lot of technology. And I also suffered an adrenal crisis quite soon after. And I think for the next 2 weeks, I had a lot of instability, and that was because I have no cortisol, aldosterone. So Mum said that I nearly died a couple of times, and they were preparing her for that to happen, but it didn't happen. It's still here. So they got that all under control, and I went along, I think, okay. I was still having adrenal crises, and it's just I was unwell a bit, and I was unwell for probably the first 10 years of my life, really, in and out of hospital type thing. But when I was 4 years old, they decided that it was time that I have normalizing surgery to fix my genitals. And that was life-changing, really. Why they did it at all, I don't know. And I was obviously able to urinate and poo without no problems up till 4. And that wasn't the reason at all. It had nothing to do with that. It was more cosmetic, their reasoning. And so it was really only one doctor back then that was controlling everything. And he basically, obviously my parents consented, but he basically told them that I would have to have it. It wasn't really something that was a choice to them. It was, I think he was quite a bully. Mum remember him, but not for the right reasons. She said she didn't like him at all. So back then I had the surgery, and I guess I went along, and I don't remember much the first 10 years of my life. Mum said they did photography on me as a baby at some point, but I was unable to get those photographs, and apparently they went into journals, so they're quite excited about their surgery on me. So I went and did that, but apart from that, I don't really remember much about my life up to about 10, I think. And then I remember going to sort of high school. I went to a private high school, and a private female high school, to try and, I guess they tried to protect me, because my public school was pretty rough back then. So they put me in there, and it was a Catholic school, which probably didn't help much because they didn't teach you about anything about sexual health or anything. There was none of that, so and I never I didn't have periods, and I didn't grow boobs. And I think a lot of that reason was because they weren't controlling my health very well, and they weren't controlling my medication very well. So I probably still had a lot of testosterone in my body. Obviously they weren't getting that balance of cortisol correct, and cortisone actually didn't come into production in the world until I think around the early 1950s. So before that, children like me were dying. Oh my God. Because they couldn't keep them alive. So there was nothing out there. So now they could keep them alive. They wanted to fix us in other ways, So
it sounds very experimental almost.
Yeah, very. And I think it still is, really.
Yeah.
So I was going to the children's hospital until I was 19, because they didn't know where else to put me, basically. And they couldn't find an endocrinologist suitable for me. But then they found somebody who I still don't think was suitable, because his specialty was diabetes. So he had to teach himself about me, and he told me that. He said I had to learn as I went along, But one thing he did do that I regret is that when I'd probably only been with him a couple of years, so I would have been in my early 20s, is he asked me if I would participate in some medical photography. And I consented without really knowing where it was going or anything about it. And I wish I never did, but I did consent, and I had photographs taken of my body, totally naked I was. And I do recall those. That's something I do recall.
Yeah.
But you can't take that back.
Yeah.
And I don't see him any longer. He retired a long time ago. So I had that done.
Did you feel like that was something you were like being pressured to do, or you felt expected to do for
Yeah,
some reason?
I did feel it, not pressure, but I did sort of feel expectation on his behalf.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I felt safe for some reason because he was getting my health quite good.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, Probably, sort of the best it had been up till then, you know.
yeah.
So I felt a little bit safe with him and
Mm.
connected with him. So I thought
Yeah.
it was a good thing to do, not
Mm.
really understanding, I guess, the long-term consequences of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I had that, yeah, back when I was in my early 20s, and I went through my, I guess, my 20s, 30s sort of years. I played a lot of sport, and I think that sort of blocked out um,
Mm.
other parts of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So sport become my life, really.
Mm.
I did a lot of running. I did triathlons. I did lots
Awesome.
of endurance stuff. It took me around the world, um, and it took over my life really for that period of time.
Yeah.
Uh,
Like a really
and
healthy outlet.
yeah, it was, and it's really I loved running because I felt like it didn't matter what was going on in your head, it would clear it all when you went
Mm.
out for a run,
Mm-hmm.
and it did all the time, and I did all my training with people, so I was around uh, others a lot, so, and we had
Mm.
one ambition, and that was to to race, so it
Nice.
was pretty took up everything. But when I was in my early 40s, because of all the running I'd had done,
Mm.
my knees started to give me trouble, and
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I ended up having to get a knee replacement a few years ago. So I had to give up running,
Oh
pretty
no.
much anything that was running. So that meant triathlon
Oh
as well. So I had no other
God.
uh, sports that could, I guess, take my mind off stuff like that did. But
Yeah.
also then I started thinking about myself, I guess, more, and wanting to know more about myself, because growing up, I didn't know what they did to me because I never talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, and I never had any psychological support either. So
Mm-hmm.
it was hard, and I wanted to know more about myself, understand myself a lot more.
Yeah.
So I started looking online, and started to find some information, because it took a long time for information to get online, I guess, and
Mm.
with technology and stuff. And so eventually I did start finding stuff coming through, and I was researching the history and going back in those years and what type of procedures they did, and
Mm-hmm.
and and found out roughly what I thought they'd done to me,
Mm-hmm.
but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't. I needed some supportive, sort of solid information to back that up, and so I tracked down my medical records, and that wasn't until I was in my early 50s,
Mm.
and found, and everything added up, and everything sort of connected. So I, I knew what they had done to me, and they had done to me the same as they'd done to all those kids back then. So they did a clitoridectomy, which is pretty much an amputation of
Mm.
the clitoris, and
Oh
that's
my
the sort of
God.
procedure they did to all kids back, I think, maybe from the 50s right up till probably the 90s.
It's horrible.
Because I've met younger people than me that also had the same procedures. So
Mm.
they did that, which obviously is going to destroy all sensation
Mm.
that you had. So, and they did a vaginoplasty
Mm-hmm.
as well.
And you were 4 years old when this
I was
happened.
4 years old back then, yeah. So, and I still wonder why you needed a vagina at 4 years old, but they
Mm.
did it, because I feel like they were preparing me for a heterosexual relationship. That's what they're preparing me for.
Yeah.
But without even knowing how I'd feel about others. Obviously back in those days it was, they never thought outside the box. Yeah. So a lot happened from the time I was sort of 50, just over 50 to now. I just learnt and discovered so much about myself. And so I feel like I'm living two lives, or have lived two lives. The first one was 0 to 50, and now it's 50 plus, which is so different. So different. Not a bad different. It's more the real me, I think.
Yay. Yeah. That's amazing. Learning about this condition and learning about the word intersex, did that have an impact on your gender and your sexuality? Because I know that the word intersex maybe has come into your life later. Do you want to talk to us about how that word had impacted your life?
Yeah. The thing is that, because I didn't even know language right up till recently.
Yeah.
Even because, and I guess that's because I came from a background of, all my friends were pretty straight. I didn't have any queer friends or have any connections with them, so I didn't know about all this other language that was out there until I discovered that I had a community, and everything just started to make sense with me as to my past, because I always growing up, I had a couple of brothers, and I had a sister as well, but I always played with the brothers because they always played outside. And I played cricket with them, I played footy with them. I ended up playing in a women's cricket team as a teenager. So I did things like that, which, everyone's doing these days, but back in those days it was unusual to do that stuff, So, and I didn't like dressing in dresses or skirts. I'd much preferred being in shorts or pants sort of type thing. And I don't even own a dress. You won't find a dress in my cupboard. So I just didn't feel like I ever felt comfortable in one.
Yeah, it just wasn't you.
It wasn't me. No. And I was never attracted to men ever. And I probably didn't feel like I had any attraction to women until probably in my 30s, when I just started to look at them a lot more, And so that just all started to make sense with the sort of people that I liked.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have male friends, but there's no sexual attraction to them. They're just almost mates, That's all they are. Yeah. Yeah. And I think once I got involved with Intersex Peer Support Australia, it just introduced me to advocacy, and advocacy introduced me to lots of queer people over here in the state.
Nice.
All fighting for human rights, I guess, for themselves, and I just now understand it so much more, and it just feels really comfortable now about who I am.
Yeah, your journey has been one that is really powerful, and I really commend you for coming on here and sharing your story, because you have been through some really, really difficult stuff that, most people in the world will not ever have to experience. And I think for a lot of intersex people, they have very unique experiences that not many people will ever experience. And it's this very important part of their lives and their identities and their bodily autonomy. And yeah, I guess I would like to know your opinion on why you think it's really important to prioritize the autonomy and self-determination of intersex individuals when it comes to the decisions of their own bodies.
Yeah. Well, evidence shows that medical interventions do cause harm, and they cause long-term pain. They cause loss of sensation, and and people get sterilized and lose reproductive body parts, which is just incredibly harmful. And many of us suffer psychological harm, and some people are assigned a sex that they don't feel they belong to, and this is really harmful to them when they grow older, because a lot of these surgeries, or pretty much all these surgeries, can't be reversed. So you are how you are, when, unfortunately, from what they decide to assign you at birth. So I think that's why autonomy should be left up to the individual, and they should definitely be able to be giving informed consent to those procedures. Doctors do these procedures and then they don't see the child once they leave the hospital. So they don't follow their lifetime journey. They don't know what happens to them, or what happens to them when they hit a relationship, or that type of thing, because they're forgotten about, and parents, well, basically parents die younger than we, because they're our parents. So they leave us behind with the trauma and the harm that they consented to. And maybe some kids are happy with the bodies that they were given, but I still feel that it's just super important that that's left up to the child to decide when they're old enough to understand the positives and the negatives of having a procedure like that.
Absolutely.
And some of them may choose not to go through that because of what damage it may cause. And I can't speak for myself, because I really don't know. I wasn't given the chance to make that decision. But I do know what damage it caused. Yeah.
How do you think we can raise awareness among doctors and healthcare providers and parents and just the general public about all of the potential harms that these surgeries can cause psychologically and physically on young intersex people?
Well, we can raise awareness through education, and education being done by people with lived experience, and we have yellow tick training, which is available to organisations and individuals, and that's taught by intersex people. So it's people with lived experience that are taking the training. So that's one way. And then you've got other things like social media, podcasts, of course.
Yes.
You've got peer support groups, Facebook, and right now there's a bit of an influx of books written by intersex people coming out. And the movie that you've seen and I haven't.
Yes, everybody. Yeah, it's great.
Yes.
I think it's coming out on streaming services. I saw them announce that it's going to be coming out on streaming services soon. So I hope that's
I did look at that, Apple TV, and it seems like it's still only Apple TV America. So I'm not sure.
Damn it.
I'm hoping it really does hit Australia, but I'm hoping that maybe during Pride celebrations that someone might take it on board and get it over here.
I hope so.
It really needs to be shown in Australia. So.
Yeah, everywhere in the world.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, and I guess awareness through listening to people with lived experiences and their stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You touched on the peer support and how important peer support is. And you just happen to be the president of Intersex Peer Support
Just happened.
Australia. Um, so would you like to tell everyone how IPSA, which is what it's called for short, operates and how it provides support and resources to intersex people and also their families?
Yeah, sure. So Intersex Peer Support is a charity run is a charity run entirely by volunteers with lived experiences. So we have volunteers in most states of Australia. So we have reps around the country to support people in that state. And you can meet people in a private setting or a group setting, or just go and have a coffee with somebody if you want, or make a phone call to somebody. We also have a private members Facebook page, so you have to join to be a member, but that's super cheap. We have online resources on our website, and our website is isupport.org.au, and we also have a conference that is held once a year, and this year it will be in Canberra and in the beginning of November. And that's a conference for Intersex Peer Support Australia members. And the last one we had was pre-COVID. So it's been a little while and people are pretty excited. And it will actually be my first conference because I wasn't even around back then when they had their last conference.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, me too. Can't wait. Yeah, it's exciting.
For me, because I had never had peer support right up till 3 years ago, and it's just changed my life really. To be able to be with people that you can share lived experiences with, to people that have similar experiences to yours. And unfortunately, most of our similarities lay in medical harm that was done to us. But it's really powerful being around community, and I just love it. And I haven't done the conference, but I went to the human rights conference earlier this year in Sydney and met a lot of intersex people from all over the world that I'd been following but never met, So and it's just mind blowing, and I couldn't stop thinking about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. You don't want to leave them once you meet them. You just want to be with them. Maybe we could have our own commune or something somewhere. It's just so much fun.
Yeah, it is really important to have that peer support for your own well-being and sense of belonging. And it does suck when you have all of these people from all around the world that you connect with, and you're like, why can't we all just live in the same city and get coffee once a week and just do all that?
I know. How nice would that be?
Yeah. But luckily we're in the day and age where you can just see someone's face, even if it's just through a screen.
That's true.
It still has a significant impact.
Yes, of course.
So I'm going to talk about promoting inclusivity just in the world in general for intersex people. In your experience, what are some important steps that organizations and institutions and society as a whole can take to create more inclusive and supportive spaces for intersex people?
Yeah. Well, I think education, as we've already spoken about, is really important, and yellow tick training. And I sort of push this into a lot of organisations that I spend time with. And I think you shouldn't. I don't think you should be advertising the I in your LGBT acronym unless you understand what the I means.
Very
There
true.
is a lot of organisations out there that take the money from the government for their organisation, but they don't have a clue
They're not really giving anything to
who we
intersex
are.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So, and the only way to know who we are is to start educating yourself through things like Yellow Tick, through online reading. Like Ira has a fantastic website that has incredible amount of resources out there.
Yeah.
And their website is ihra.org.au. So you should go online and have a look at that.
Yes. This is Intersex Human Rights Australia, for anyone wondering.
That's correct. But other organisations, I think they can do things like put flags up, like intersex flags, like pride flags, or even stickers. I'm currently seeing a specialist who has an intersex sticker stuck right on the door as you walk in.
Oh, that's awesome.
As well as a pride flag. So they're
nice.
Inclusive, but also when you fill in your paperwork as a new patient, they have pronouns, and instead of just having your two boxes, your male female box, they have non-binary, they have other, and they have prefer not to say. So everyone is included.
Amazing.
Which I find really amazing, and I think all doctors and GPs should be taking that on board, that type of thing. Also, I think gender neutral bathrooms, because some intersex people are non-binary, and also transgender. So I think that should just be a thing everywhere. And I can't see what the big deal about that is, really.
Yeah, I know, right?
I just don't get it. Maybe it costs a little bit more to do individual toilets, but so what? It just makes life so much easier for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think just treating people with respect, and not asking invasive questions unless they want to talk about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So looking ahead, what are your hopes and your aspirations for the future of intersex support and acceptance in Australia and globally?
I think firstly we need to bring in legislation to ban all non-consensual medical procedures on intersex kids across the country. I'd love to say across the world, but that's a huge task, and I don't know if that will ever happen. Probably not. Well, it will never happen in my lifetime, but it is happening a little bit in quite a few different countries. But as far as Australia goes, we should introduce legislation that is very similar to what has just been introduced by the ACT government. What I'd really like to see is the federal government brought it in. That would make life a lot easier for us advocates if we could have one lot of legislation across the board.
Yeah.
And a lot less work involved, that would be the ideal thing.
Yeah.
But I would really like to see that. I like to see intersex people be treated equally in society. I feel like they very much aren't, especially in medical institutions, I feel, but also in workplaces, schools,
yeah, totally.
So I would like to see that change. I'd like to see education change in schools.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely.
It is so out of date.
Yeah.
And I think if education changed, then society would be more accepting of us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because they would understand, and so they don't understand right now.
Yeah.
And so that needs to change, and I think that needs to change soon. And I think also what else? We need education in medical schools. We need doctors to be educated on
I was going to say
intersex
that.
before they qualify, and not be educated by us.
Yeah.
And also nursing schools,
Yeah.
because they just don't get it either. Most of them. I've been in our hospital many times, and yeah, it's just constant education of nurses at least. I do a bit of educating myself of medical students. I've done a few presentations like that.
That's
and
cool.
I've also done midwives, which seems to be a sort of an ongoing gig now with someone that is a midwife, and who I work with them to do 2 or 3 presentations a year, but it's only in the one hospital, unfortunately. So it's a state maternity hospital, but it's the only one. And this person is queer themselves, and that's probably why they get it.
Yeah.
But you got to start somewhere, I guess.
Exactly.
I can't educate a lot because I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
And I don't get paid for it.
Yeah. That's the thing about all the advocacy and activist work.
Yeah.
You're just doing this work because you feel passionate, not because there's money in it.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm a little bit choosy as to who I do education with.
Yeah.
I could ever educate a humanities dog, but I can't afford to financially and time-wise as well. So I do pick and choose who I take these offers up with. But I feel like midwifery is super important because they're the first.
Totally, yeah.
Apart from the doctor, the first person is going to see someone that may have different sex characteristics.
Yep. Yeah.
So that seems to be working quite well. So,
nice.
Yeah, so I enjoy that.
That's great. I mean, it sounds like you're doing some really awesome work. I mean, I would love to be educating aspiring doctors and nurses and stuff.
You are educating.
I mean, I guess I am. But I just have this vision of like me in like university room being like, okay, let me tell you how it is.
Yeah. Well, you might start getting offers soon. Who knows?
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah. People are seeing you out there, so
yeah, true.
if that's what you like, yeah. But it's hard to get money out of them, especially if it's a public system. That is a big problem. And that's why we need funding. I think that's something I'm trying to push, and I have a few meetings with members of parliament, and that's something I push, is to try and get funding into these public hospitals so that they can do this sort of stuff, and they can pay people to come in and do it for them. Because in WA, there's only one hospital that gets some funding for LGBTIQ education, and it's only a little bit, and it's only part-time. So it's not good enough.
What can we do, the people that are listening to this, the allies, the other intersex people, everyone else who wants to, what can we do to help change that? If there is a way that we can show support.
Be nice if people started putting their hands in their pockets and started giving us some money. But I think the funding needs to come from the government, really.
Yeah.
Towards things, and we need to get funding for peer support organisations, and we need to get funding for psychosocial support. And most of this is not happening. I know in my state, my children's hospital, they're not doing that. There is no peer support. So nothing's really changed since the day I was born.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's the same way of thinking, and multidisciplinary panels that aren't multidisciplinary. They're just loaded with doctors that want to cut us up, really. So they need to change their way of thinking and start making psychosocial support and peer support number one, not what they're currently doing, and start funding it, and the government can fund it. They just aren't at present. So, yeah, a lot of things need to change, and it takes time, unfortunately, a lot of time.
Yeah.
But I guess we just have to keep talking about it. There's not much other ways, I don't think, except lots of talking.
Yeah. Well, luckily there is some pretty ambitious intersex people out there working to change this and leading the way for all of the future children. So hopefully if we just keep going, that things will change slowly but surely. I mean, we can only hope, really, really, truly hope that work that we do is going to get noticed and make things happen.
Yeah, and I think it already is. Obviously, with the ACT it is. And across the world, you're starting to see stuff happen. So it is happening. But change takes time. But we do have some fantastic advocates and activists around the world. And in Australia, we have some of the best people who are working their butts off
Totally.
to make change happen, and it takes massive efforts for that to happen. But hopefully with the ACT legislation in place, then things might start moving a little bit faster across the country. But we can't just stand still and wait for it to happen, because it won't happen if we do that. So we need to just keep talking.
Yeah. Well, you were awesome. Thank you so much for coming on here. And again, I commend you for sharing your story and being so brave to really just talk about everything. This is so, so important. Heavy, but important that people hear this. And I know that there are going to be people that really, really needed to hear this. So I thank you so much for your candor and your authenticity. So yeah, thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on.
Thank you, Bloom. It's been awesome being on.
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.